You are listening to Making It, the path to beauty industry greatness with canvasme, where we go behind the scenes to explore the human side of beauty professionals, learn how they found balance in their lives, overcame obstacles, and created communities that transcend the ordinary. Hosted by canvasme co-founders Jen and Matt Martinelli alongside canvasme directors April and Megan, Making It is your guide to navigating the ever-evolving world of beauty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Making It podcast. Today, Matt and I met with Ben Brown, who is a wealth of wisdom. I learned so much from him in this chat. He's a successful independent hair educator, and in just 1 year, Ben had gone from being a salon owner to becoming a full-time and in-demand hair educator. He delivers bee education to salons all around the world. Sam Villa recently named him as one of the top educators that you should be following today. If you're not following him, you need to follow him now at Ben Brown Hair. Join us as we talk to Ben about his journey, failure, mindset, imposter syndrome, and so much more. Hi, everybody. We are here with Ben Brown. Welcome, Ben. We're so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Ben, we are coming to you today because a few weeks back, we were interviewing Sam Villa, and Sam Villa mentioned you as somebody he is following and keeping up with in terms of an educational person that he's looking at right now today, that everybody else should be following. So, of course, it makes so much sense to be sitting with you here today. So how do you feel about that? Like, I just want to talk a little bit about like that moment where Sam Villa is like, go follow Ben Brown.
I mean, it's a huge moment because to me, Sam is someone that has helped shape a lot of the current and the sort of, I would say, I think he's helped shape a lot of people's mentality on what you can do besides working behind the chair. So to have somebody of that iconic reputation to single me out for my efforts in the area of teaching people how to cut hair, I felt like I needed to get my whole family around. You know, it was like this huge moment. It's like a Super Bowl final. We need to get everybody around to see this moment. So, no, it was a huge deal to me. It still is a big deal to me, as is Sam. So thank you, Sam Villa. That was amazing.
This podcast is called Making It, right? And so we really like to highlight journeys, right? Because everyone thinks it's this linear approach of I graduate school, I do all these things, and all of a sudden I'm successful. And really what we're discovering is it's not very linear. And so being that you just got a shout out from Sam Villa and all that you've accomplished in your educational career, do you feel that you've made it?
Far from it, to be honest with you. Absolutely. When I was getting ready for this interview and I saw that question, I thought, I think that's what makes people good, is that they never think they've made it and they're always searching for that next level. You certainly can't have light without shade. So for every positive thing that you're trying to search for, don't be knocked back if there's a negative, because for you to reach where you're trying to get to, you're going to have to go through a certain amount of things that haven't gone as planned, and they're there to shape you, to make you able to sustain whatever level of success you're aiming for. So no,
I love that
definitely don't
answer.
see me being successful yet. No.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I agree with you. I think every time you reach a certain level, there's always another level that you're achieving. But I'm actually reading a book, Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima. She has a mantra that every closed door is a redirection, right? So, I mean, she gets very spiritual about it, but she's all about like any closed door or any struggle is a redirection to the path that you're supposed to be on. Yeah. And so I think if you can frame it in that reference, from that reference point is, yes, the struggles kind of put you in that right path to be truly who you were meant to be and shine big. So I think that perspective helped so much.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, right? Like I think so much of it is mindset, and it's so hard. Like it's even Jen and I, even, you know, there's days even now where we're like, yes, we're on top of the world. This is amazing. And then
tomorrow,
then that night, it's like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Right. And I think you have to look and you have to trust. You have to trust the journey. A big part of what we do is trust, right? Because I think when you can combine your purpose with your passion, I do believe that you become unstoppable. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard to achieve the goals you want to achieve, but when you have closed doors or you're having struggles throughout your journey, you have to think that it's because it's pushing you to a different direction on purpose, right? Because if you're not thinking positive, if you're not thinking, it's so easy to get down and so easy to fall to those fears and those struggles. So I think it's really about the mindset. So I love that, you haven't made it because there's so much more that you want to accomplish. But I think it's also so important to not forget about all the good things that
you have done. Yeah.
Right. Because I think it's so hard. Like Jen and I, we don't celebrate the wins because it's like, 3 years ago, we had goals that we've now hit that are just like nothing to us because we've already have so many bigger goals.
Yeah.
But we don't celebrate enough. So do you find yourself not celebrating enough, or are you good at that?
I really, a lot of what you've said really resonates with me. Absolutely. I think, like, if we were all chefs and we just achieved a Michelin star, we would immediately go back to work for the second and then the third.
Yes.
I think it's becoming is better than being. That's one of the things I say to people that I teach. I always say the hunger, that will push you into stretching beyond what's comfortable, learning a new skill, establishing new relationships. All those types of things are certainly going to shape you to push you to where you want to go. A lot of things that I currently do now scared me a while ago. But you kind of get used to the discomfort, the amount of traveling I have to do now, the amount of hours. I mean, I was sat in an airport for 6 hours the other day in a delay. And, I think that's a blessing. I dreamt of that at one point. Right. In regards to, I really love what you said about, I think one of the things you've got to do if you're searching for something that just seems beyond you, you said your mindset is everything, and I find that really reassuring because I think I haven't got to win the lottery, I haven't got to find a lamp and rub it and get a genie to pop out. This is in my control, and I find that more cathartic. That I know that if I can align my actions to match my values, then what I'm after. I remember hearing a while ago when somebody said, you can't talk yourself out of something that you've behaved yourself into, So I still practice. I'd say a good 8 hours a week. I'm still with a mannequin or doing someone's hair for free and just trying to perfect something. I certainly think that people that are, in my eyes, really successful, like Sam. I've met Sam many times, and he's incredibly humble. He's incredibly likable, and he's somebody that that I definitely want to. I'm so amazed that I have a relationship with where I can message him and things. But Sam would say the same. Like, he wouldn't consider himself successful. He wouldn't any of those things. But then, like, I totally agree. It's very important to look back and see how far you've come, but just keep moving forward. Absolutely. I think, I cannot believe I came from a salon that failed financially, left me in a lot of debt, huge failure. Then you've traveled and taught in over 40 countries, So I definitely will give myself that pat on the back temporarily and go, well done. This is great. However, there's more work to do. There's always more work to do.
I agree. And I love that you say that, 8 hours a week, you're constantly working on your craft. You're constantly educating yourself. Mark Bustos, a friend of ours from the States, he says, I didn't get this far just to get this far.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So true.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think, we work with a lot of young professionals. And I think so much of our industry, there's so many amazing people in our industry. Everybody is capable of achieving really big things, but not everybody has the mindset to put in the work that you need to get to a level that you're at. Right. So I think it's so important to these young professionals to see how you're continuing to educate yourself and continuing to grow personally and professionally, even though you've achieved so much. And that's why we have this podcast. So people realize that Jen mentioned earlier, it's not linear, right? There's going to be things that you go throughout your entire journey that are going to teach you a lot about yourself and how far you're willing to take. Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I heard this quote. This person said that an aircraft will go from, let's say, London to New York, and it'll be off course 70% of the time. Right. So sometimes I try to say to people, like, you know, do not think, like you just said, it is not a 1, 2, 3. Often you'll go to minus 50 and then you'll come back up again. So it definitely needs a lot of discipline with your mindset. And the way to really respect yourself is to discipline yourself when it comes to your profession. You know, when it comes to how you handle your craft, whatever your craft is. If you put hair up, if you ski for a living, or if you do, you know, if you do cut hair, it's vital that the craft is something that you develop and work on, because your gifts aren't going to work on themselves. So you've got to put the work.
So true.
So true. I love that. And I think if anybody's listening, it's not like we get to the top and then you don't have to do any more work, right? It's almost like you get to the top and you almost have to do more work to stay there and to keep going and to keep hustling. So I love that. So you talked about some challenges early on in your career. Can you take us through that journey? So how did you get here? Yeah. How did you start off? Tell us about that.
I'd love to share that with you. So essentially, I worked for one salon. You know, in 16 in England, you can stay in education or you can go into what's called an apprenticeship, which is a bit like going to cosmetology school, but you work full time in a salon and you have 1 day a week training. So I stayed at one salon from the age of 16 until I was 30. So, you know, 14 years of working at one place, which is really quite unheard of now. But I just loved the philosophy of the salon. I loved what it was about. I don't feel I learned very little about cutting hair there, but I learned a lot about how to work on the salon floor, you know, like how to run a column correctly. My wife and I, we had our daughter when I was 29, and as soon as you have a child like that, I think you just take stock of your life, and nothing prepares you for how much you love them. So you just want them to have everything, and you think to yourself, how am I gonna afford that house in the countryside? How am I going to afford that trip to Orlando Disney? You know, which is every kid's dream. And I was doing well in a salon, but I felt like owning a salon was the pinnacle of success in our industry. You know, I think having a name above a door, that was it. You know, I have to be really honest with you and say that it wasn't that for me. It was actually quite a big failure. And it failed because I never really took time to look at the numbers. I never really forward planned financially. I had, in all honesty, I completely underestimated the whole thing. And I think that, you know, for me personally, I would say like any salon owner knows their figures. And it was almost like I just thought, if I can be a brilliant hairdresser, we'll succeed. But, you know, I was very naive with the staff. I was very naive with finances, and it just failed, and it did fail. But I wouldn't consider myself a failure, not for a second. Right. You know, I joke. I say this joke when I tell people this story. I say, like, I can't. If I had to sprint against Usain Bolt and I lost, nobody would say, "Well, you're a failure now." It was the wrong race. Right. Well, what I do now is definitely the right race. It fits me really well. I learned from that failure. I'm such a more stronger business person because I've experienced, you know, almost losing your house. I've experienced, you know, those scary letters you get when you owe the tax money, you know, and it wasn't easy. But why should it be easy? Where is it written that great things are meant to come easy? If they were meant to come easy, they wouldn't be great. So I ended up, just before my business failed, I would say 4 years into owning the salon, I realized that I was pretty average, below average at cutting hair. So when did this happen? Well, it happened when I was training one of my own apprentices how to do like a long concave layered haircut, very simple haircut. And I explained to the learner that we're going to take a center profile section and all the subsequent sections are going to pivot until you hit the radial section. Upon hearing these instructions, the learner asks me a great question. They ask me, why did the sections pivot? Like, what's so like? What does pivoting do? Like, what's the significance of that? Like, why can't the sections just remain parallel? Why? And I had no idea why they pivoted. At all. I had no idea at all. And what I realized was the reason I was such a fully booked hairdresser, I was booked out and busy, was because I was actually a very good salesperson and actually not a very good craftsperson. And I saw a distinct galaxy between those two. And it was no longer enough to me to be fully booked every day. It was no longer enough to me for that. I wanted to be a phenomenal hair cutter. And when I say phenomenal, I don't mean better than anybody else. I don't mean that at all. I love the fact that there's so many people that are so much better than me. And I love to see their work and be inspired by it as an example of the standard I should be trying to achieve. So I want everyone to win, firstly. But I will compete with myself day to day to day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Each day, are you slightly improving? And because I couldn't afford to go to like Sassoon, which is, they seem to me to be like the Jedi Council of hairdressing. They just seem to be this phenomenal group of people. And I wanted more than anything to be trained by them, but I just didn't have the money. You know, it was the simple fact. Great education like that costs money, and I didn't have money. I was in debt. And I thought, you know, not only did I not have the money, but my business couldn't afford to have me not making the money.
Mm-hmm.
So how did I solve that problem? Well, you can make excuses or you can make adjustments. And I decided to learn online, and I decided to learn from their books. So I obviously subscribed to the sites. I bought the ABC. And I bought the Tony and Guy Future Classics. And I say this a lot to my students. When I started to read that book, I thought, this is it. This is going to solve everything. I didn't understand a word. I didn't understand how can a haircut be round, square, or triangle. You know, I didn't understand it at all. And I felt worse for a period of time. And I tell my students that when I teach my theory lecture, I always say, when you sit in that chair and you feel, I thought I knew more than this, I've also been that person that you are right there and then. And everything I'm saying can be learned. Everything you see me do can be learned. When you watch me cut hair, and if you think, oh, that looks easy, and then you struggle, you didn't watch my first attempt on that bob.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't watch my 10th attempt or my 100th attempt. You're watching me cut something I probably cut 1,000 times. I should be good at it. It's not because I possess skills you don't possess. It's because I've devoted an area of my life to improving, and this is the area that I focused on. So I practiced and practiced and practiced, and how I did it was, because I think if you make it too general, your goal, this is a big bit of advice. If you say, I want to be a brilliant hair cutter, well, how do you measure it? How do you measure that goal? How do you manage it? I said I wanted to do one haircut, and that was the graduated bob. And I wanted to get to a level where that graduated bob was really, really good. You know, I never say perfect, but technically proficient anyway. So I practiced it every single day after work for 100 days in a row on a mannequin. And to ensure, and this is what another bit of advice is, I would film yourself cut hair and watch it back. And then write a list of things that, because I had no one that could watch me to coach me. So I would film myself cutting this graduated bob. And then I would watch it back and I'd write a list that said maybe section 2, elevation too low, section 3, over direction too far in the middle, whatever. And the next day, I would pin this list to the mirror and start again. And even after 100 days, I was still pretty rubbish. And I always say that to my students. I say, like, you know, this has taken me a long time. I never found any haircut easy. I've never found any of this come natural, but it has come, you know, and it came with a huge amount of small improvements. There's never been one big day where suddenly I could do something. It was a very slow sort of merge into an area where I became technically proficient and was able to cut hair to a standard where I was confident enough to post it on social media, you know. So, and then people started to contact me, and you know, I started to work overseas in Ireland, then Barcelona, then Napoli, then Atlanta in America, then Dubai, then it was South America, you know. So it's not been you know, an overnight success or anything like that, but like I'm amazed it happened at all. I mean, I'm 44 now, and from the age of 37, I've been really, you know, my salon went almost bankrupt when I was 37, and since then I've just perpetually and consistently chased my own potential, you know, and that really is. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking to you guys, you two superstars. So I must be doing something right if I'm in the same Riverside room as you guys.
Listen, You said so many good things,
So many good things.
but I want to go a little bit deeper, because what I loved you said is that you wish happiness and success for everybody, right? You wish everybody just to succeed. And to me, that's a really emotionally intelligent comment, right? And
Oh,
in an industry, and we talk to a lot of young professionals, in an industry where I think it's very unique, where you're on the floor with 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 other stylists that you're seeing exactly what they're doing. It's so hard, I think, for young professionals not to compare themselves to what other people are doing. Right. And I think it's such a difficult trap to get into, because you said it, like you only put goals against yourself, right? Like you want to just do better the next day than you did the day before. Right. How did you get to that mindset though? Is it something you've always innately had in you? Is it people around you? Like, I think that's what so many young professionals are missing. And so how did you bring that into your life?
I think there's a lot of good mentors out there. Sam is one, and I think following people like that, they're always chasing. If you notice them, they're always producing something new or contributing something new. There was a book that I read called. There was two big books, I would say. One was The Chimp Paradox, that was vital. I don't know why, and I can't really explain it, but I struggle to think positive. Like, I never find that, like, it's natural. I almost feel like I'm more naturally disposed to worrying or panicking or doubting. So I understand that I have to work against that tide. And certain autopilots I managed to put in place was really from reading a book called The Chimp Paradox. I would also say the E-Myth Manager has been, a vital thing. But I'd say, like, whatever you wish on somebody else, you're wishing upon yourself at the same time. So, whatever thought you have or talk about, that's only going to, replicate and multiply in your own existence. So why wouldn't you, talk? I mean, I see people doing things far better than me, right? And I just want to get around them. I'm like, that's brilliant. I don't want to think for a second that the way I do it is the only way to do it. And when I, get a challenging comment on Instagram or anything like that, I love that. I love it if someone doesn't get what I'm talking about and doesn't agree, because if we both understand it, and I understand it 80%, and you understand it 80%, but our 20% are different, I want to know your 20%, because I love to learn, which is why I teach. I'm not done learning. I'm not done growing. And if you know something I don't know, absolutely, I don't care. I've got no ego with this. The information I know isn't mine to keep. It's ours as a custodian to pass it forward. That's the whole point. You learn it, you develop it, you benefit from it, and you share it. So absolutely, like, my mindset hasn't come overnight either. So again, don't think you're going to wake up and suddenly feel like Tony Robbins, because you won't. I wake up. It takes me about half an hour to get myself in the right state most mornings. And most mornings I wake up and I'm like, oh God, I feel overwhelmed. I've got so much to do. I just say, just put one foot in front of the other. That's it. Whether I'm dealing with something with our accounts, or I'm dealing with a supply, or I'm dealing with logistics, or, I love dealing with people. I love responding to emails and social media things. I have that's not really, but obviously dealing with, like, trying to book a flight or, stuff like that, can get me a bit panicky, because I'm thinking, oh God, what if I get this wrong? And I just put one foot in front of the other. And before I know it's hit me, 2 hours have gone by and I've achieved masses. So if you're nervous, if you're anxious, if you're overwhelmed, then just do it like that. Just do it overwhelmed. Just do it anxious. Just do it nervous. But don't not do it.
Yeah. We used to talk about that.
I think too, like, it's coming down to that discipline, right? So, like, teaching yourself discipline, even though I don't feel like, or I don't want to, or I'm nervous or I'm scared, do it anyway. Do it scared, do it nervous, do it however way. And little by little, you start to realize, I got this, I can do this. And I think you mentioned state, right? So you get up in the morning, and I think all of our brains scientifically are wired to be worried, scared, right? Like, we're talking about when we used to live with, like, Cybertooth, we're all wired to kind of have that fear component, right? Because we were wired that way to survive, right? Out in the wilderness. And now, society has evolved. We don't really need that anymore. And so I think it's so important to have that level of awareness that it's something that we must choose every single morning. And it's funny, I used to tell my kids this, like, when you wake up in the morning, would you choose, and this is a very silly example, Matt used to make me laugh on this, but would you choose poop or would you choose Skittles? Like, I'm going to choose Skittles. I'm not choosing poop, right? And it's very simple. And just like choosing happiness or sadness, and sometimes it's really hard to get ourselves out of it, but choosing the right physiology, right? Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. Just clapping and smiling, even when you don't, especially when you don't feel like it, right? Starts to rewire your brain to have some level of, okay, let me get excited about this. Let me do this, and really priming yourself for that day. That's all a choice, right? That's all part of our habits that keep us in this mental space of feeling really good. Or, you know, not to say that we don't have our bad days, but we limit it. Like Matt and I used to come home from work every day before we co-founded canvasme, and we would rattle off all of the bad things that happened during the day, right? This one did this and that one said this, and right. And then at one point we said, okay, we give this 5 minutes of life. 5 minutes of life to get whatever you need to get off your chest. And then we never talk about it again. And pretty soon that 5 minutes of life became 2 minutes. And then it was 1 minute, because we started to realize how good we felt when we didn't come home and complain every day. And we're like, why would we ever want to go back to that place? Mm-hmm. And so you just start to really rewire and train yourself. And so I love that about you, and that you have that level of awareness, and it wasn't something innate, right? And actually it's quite the opposite. And I love that you made no excuses, right? You had no financial freedom. You couldn't afford what and there's no excuse, right? I'm going to make it happen no matter what, because if it's a burning desire and it's something that you really, really want, we can all make some adjustment to start the path, no matter how small. Mm-hmm. To get there.
Yeah. And I love what you said too about just do it. Whether you're nervous, whether you have anxiety, just do it. Yeah. Jen and I used to talk about, like, you know, Jen talks about her story where, like, she passed up on a lot of things and she played really small because she was a perfectionist and she thought that it wasn't ready to do. She wasn't ready to be there. We used to tell students, like, you showing up at 70 or 60 or 50% is better than not showing up at all.
Better than 0%.
Right. Yeah. And so, you know, we also used to say that too, because again, like, not showing up, you know, you can't hit any of the shots you don't take.
Well, I love that you brought that back, Ben, because I know you were saying that you were perfecting your haircut, right? And then you eventually posted it to social. Like, when do we know we're ready to post it to social? Like, we don't want to be the perfectionist and wait. You almost want immediate feedback, but you don't want to go too early. When is that sweet spot? When are we doing this?
It's when you would like the post, whatever you're about to post, would you like it? Would you share it? Would you save it? If it's yes, then post it. Now, you're never going to feel ready. Okay, so you've got to find. It's important that you do post. It is important that you do post, because then you're seen. You're trying to grow your social media. It's even more important. So if you aren't, like, I love what you said then about Jen, where, you know, I passed up on things because I'm a perfectionist and stuff. I know so many hairdressers like that whose work I think is absolutely fabulous. So I post it for them. I'm taking a picture of that, and I'm going to post it. So you see, you know, when I posted my first cutting video, I was very nervous because I thought, I'm going to get torn to pieces here. And, you know, people, like, you get people who don't understand why you're holding your scissor a certain way. So you're gripping your scissor in the reverse grip, and they don't know. And I mean, the thing is, you are going to get negative comments. I get a bunch a day of them. But the reason it never bothers me, and it's a simple reason, but it's nobody great does that. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody great. Well, I get tagged in work and I don't always like it. I don't always think, well, that's great, but I admire the fact that they're posting it. You know, they are posting stuff. They're tagging me in it, you know. I would never dream of commenting something negative on someone's work. I get a huge amount of, I'm a big guy. I get a lot of people just fat shaming me on my work. I couldn't care less. I'm beautiful, firstly.
Yes, you are.
100%.
No, I'm joking. I'm just joking. But
I love it.
But you see, why would I give any life to that?
Yeah.
And it's funny, and it goes, and I used to get really scared of what people thought and that all that stuff. And I think you just have to get in the mindset of, like, hurt people. So for somebody to go out of their way in their day to make a negative comment, you have to think of the kind of person behind the screen, and you almost have to have compassion and empathy for them. And it's tough. It doesn't always work, that mindset. Sometimes you're still like so hurt and so upset. And that's where you just really need a network, and you really need to just reflect on being the most confident you that you can be. And I really love, there's a quote, "The man in the arena," that's out there. It's a really long quote, but it's essentially, I wouldn't take, what was that? The
I'm just
man in
going to
the
write that
arena. Yeah.
down.
And it's essentially talks to, if that person that's commenting on my, whatever, or making a statement about who I am, if they're not playing in the same arena that I'm in, doing what I'm doing, putting myself out there, then their advice means nothing, or their comment means nothing. And so, just constantly reminding yourselves and grabbing these tools when you need them, but going for it, because that's one of the things that we see a lot. And I was victim of this for so many years, of not taking action for fear of all these things. And you're self-sabotaging on limiting beliefs that are not real, and once you start to put yourself out there, you start to realize they aren't real. I can do this. So I think that's so powerful for everybody listening. We all have these fears, even Ben Brown, even Sam Villa, right? We all have these fears. Yeah. It's how to overcome and have that mindset to keep you in that state of action.
And also, it's actually quite good to post things at whatever level you're at, because I see work now, when it gives you like 3 years ago, like Instagram or Facebook will show you.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't post that now, but that at the time, it was like my best work. That was my personal best. And if anything, that gives me more fire, because I think, God, look at my work now in comparison. And at the time, I thought I was phenomenal, and then there we go. I think that people have to understand, I suppose, that anyone can be a critic. It's the easiest thing in the world, is to have no credibility but to critique. And I always say, take criticism but don't take disrespect.
Agreed. Yes,
criticism
I love
is fine. I love criticism. I have no issue with it at all, because I'm not the finished article. I've got just as much to learn as I have to teach. And I'm really keen when someone knows more than me or doesn't understand the way I've explained it, to learn from them. I've got no ego with this, like I said. So I think what you've got to search for with your content is that there's an authenticity to your content. You're not chasing a trend or chasing likes. You're posting things that are ultimately credible to you. If you love the work, if you're doing the work you love and you're getting good content of it, you'll always have an authenticity, and that can't really be copied. So I would always say, chase the sort, like when I wrote my cutting programs, I wrote them for me first. When I wrote my book, I wrote that for me first. Any tutorial I create, until I've signed off on it, I would never post it unless I loved it. And obviously, like, perfection is a kind of poison chalice. You're never going to get there, and in the end, it will stop you from posting your personal best. Achieve your personal best, post it, and move on to beat it. It's kind of cool. It keeps a record of everything you've done. Like, you look at your work from 5 years ago, 2 years ago, even 6 months ago. I aim to see an improvement. My first goal of any year is to be better than last year. Never rest on your laurels.
Yep.
I love that. And so you've cultivated a huge following on social. So you have, almost 400,000 followers on Instagram, 37,000 on YouTube and TikTok. You mentioned this authenticity component, right? And I even know for us in our business, it's like, okay, what is this one doing? And what's that one doing? And what's getting engagement? How do you find that point of authenticity? How do you find, like, okay, this is working. This is what I'm going to continue? Because everybody wants to strive to have these follower counts. Like, how do you even start that? Is it really just go out there and see what works? How do you do that?
I would say you can't use what you don't have. So I'm not good on camera, for example. Like, some people are really, really good at speaking to the camera. They're very charismatic and they've got a great voice that carries. So I don't copy that or mimic that when I see that works, and it works very well for people. What I got the most excited about was just seeing beautiful technique. You know, if I was watching someone styling, cutting or colouring, I'd know within 10 seconds, you go, they can clearly cut hair, they can clearly do dress hair, they can clearly colour hair. My aim was just to be technically very proficient. I was using social media originally to try to reach out to people where I adored their work. And it's amazing. You get such an instant, like look at what these huge hairdressers are doing. And next thing you know, you've got, they'll like your work. And you're thinking, well, that gives me a great idea of how I'm doing, with my own efforts to improve. I think that you've got to see your social media as a shop window. You're displaying to your potential customers or your tribe or your community, you're essentially advertising whatever it is that you're about. If it's a personal account, it's still the same thing. If you're trying to grow it, you need to be very specific about what it is. And if you can't sum it up, then it's too diffused. So if, let's say you say, well, I'm a clothes shop. Yeah. And one week you're doing winter jackets and the next week you're doing shoes. Then you're doing athletic wear. You wouldn't really know why you went there. It's too general. But if you say we specialize in tailoring winter jackets, we specialize in making sure that this fits. If you are very specific about like people wouldn't follow me for balayage. They wouldn't follow me. There's very little they'd follow me for. Except for just, I'd like to, I like to see a bob cut one. I like to see short hair or something. That would be what it was all about. You need to be very specific about what it is you're trying to post. If you're a salon, what is it you're selling? Are you selling peace of mind? Are you selling convenience? Are you selling luxury? And then you have to sort of stick quite religiously, really, to that. I think that growing it, I mean, obviously, you should always look at your insights. They're going to tell you like what time of day to post. So like if I'm teaching in like Dubai or Saudi Arabia, I will post at different times of the day. Like, I'm coming to Orlando in America soon, and then I come back to Texas and then Connecticut. So obviously I would post in that time zone. So you should be looking at it quite strategically and not just hitting and hoping, and hashtags. I mean, I've never really felt they do masses. I posted with and without them. I mean, I can't really articulate what gets a video to go viral, in all honesty. I've tried loads of things, and things that I've thought would do really well don't. And like things that, like I did a bob recently, and just a dead simple bob on a mannequin head, and it went viral and got like 8 million views. And I could have really, I didn't do anything different on that than I did with anything else. So I would say just keep posting strategically. Post to what outcome are you looking for? If you only have followers, you won't get there. If you're trying to bring a level of value to the market, like for me, I was trying to advertise the fact that my business sells education solutions. So you're trying to post the type of education solutions that I would search for. And it astounds me that I've got a large following. Really, it really does. I can't explain how I've got it. I'm glad I have, but I don't know what I've done to deserve to have it, or I don't do anything different or anything to anybody else. But ultimately, I'm just of the mindset that I always like to post the sort of things I like to see. I love to see beautiful haircuts. I like it when the technique's very clear, when it's not subjective or ambiguous, but nailed on. This is how you cut hair.
Yes, so smart about being focused and purpose driven. Similar to, we asked Sam this question too, but obviously inspiration, additional education that you're looking for. Are there any people or brands that you love to follow that inspire you?
Oh, there's so many. Well, firstly, Sam is always a go-to. Sam Villiers. I mean, as I said, I don't know how old Sam is, and that's not important, but Sam just seems like he's 21. He just seems this amazing person that brings an energy and relatability to high-end education. I would say there's somebody in Australia, her name is Lyndall Salmon. She just won Australian Hairdresser of the Year. I would say her work is masterfully creative, innovative, beautiful. I can always see the structure in there. The level of intelligence that she must have to get the reference and make it into this hair that relates to so many different hairdressers is absolutely astonishing. It's a gentleman in China called Stanley Lau, whose work is just off the charts, off the charts. And I would say Rachel Williams. Rachel's work Rachel makes something so difficult look easy, which is she can manipulate and visually move and place the hair. I can't hold a candle to Rachel Williams. And I would love to learn from her. I'd love to learn from Sam, Lindahl, or Stanley. Gianni Scamacci, I mean, he's Richard Ashforth. They're two of the greatest hair cutters. I would say, though, that always have a broad spectrum. Don't learn from one person. Don't just learn from me. I don't know everything. Right. Far from it. You should just. I sometimes go on someone's page like Richard or Gianni, who are two of the greatest haircutters in the world, and I'll see who they follow.
Yes.
So I'd sometimes go on and see, well, who are they following? And then I would look at the hairdressers. Roger, Roger, who works with Sam. Yep. You talk about authenticity. I mean, Roger's like a pioneer. He's bringing stuff out that none of us have ever seen before. He had the sort of courage to do it, where he pulled the hair up and showed you the expanded, a whole new way of teaching a haircut. So he's sort of working with mannequin heads still relevant. So I have a huge amount of respect for all those people. Ashley, Norman. I mean, I don't know how many people you said to the list. But I see a lot of my inspiration is very industry centered. There is a plethora of people to be inspired by. There's no shortage of phenomenal people that are setting a huge example of how professional and how hard I should work.
I love that too. We always talk about, your network is your net worth. And in the beginning, Matt and I, especially when we started this mindset journey, it was like, okay, remove the toxic people from your life and really focus and hone in on the people that, pour into your life. And at first, and there's this kind of in between period where you have nobody, and it's like, you don't have access to mentors or people, but what you do have, right, is the ability to follow them on social, watch their videos, digest everything that they're doing, right? Almost as if they're your mentor without knowing they're your mentor, And so I think in today's world, we have access to so much that we can have a mentor without investing in a mentor,
I think the first thing you've got to do is to get your work noticed. So you've got to be producing. Now that doesn't mean you have to buy, work with a professional model or any of those things. All I did was I practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I would post my efforts, and, you started to attract people. People would look at it and go, well, whose work's this? And the next thing you're at a level where people respond favorably to your work, and they kind of can't believe you've never been trained formally, and yet you've just sort of made a decision to look past where you are now and to change all your behaviors to the same behaviors of somebody who would have achieved the things I want to achieve in my life, So true. So it's all possible. It's all possible. It's all out there waiting for you. But are you going to lift your craft to a standard and get it noticed,
Yep. It's all a choice. I love that. And this is pretty much our last question, but I have to ask you because I often go through this and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. Do you get imposter syndrome? So imposter syndrome is really, you work so hard, you start to get noticed, you start to see a little bit of success. And then all of a sudden you wonder, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I putting myself out there? What do I know? How am I qualified to be educating these people? Or why am I qualified to have this large following? How do you talk yourself out of that imposter syndrome or feeling like you might not deserve this?
I mean, I definitely do. I haven't got any Sassoon training. I never worked for a major company. I tried running a salon and it failed. I don't look the way a lot of educators look, where they all seem to look beautiful. And yet it's my full-time job. I've got an online education site with subscribers in over 100 countries. My book's sold in over 100 countries. And I'm not bragging, please don't think that, but I'm just saying that I think that I tell myself, what's the alternative? Do I keep believing? I don't have the impressive bio, so what? But the option is I can keep on improving myself. I can keep on bettering myself day in, day out and make sure my work is just so slick and so sharp that I can post it and get noticed and get opportunities out of it. I think that you need to understand that there's experience and there's belief, right? And people will say, just believe in yourself. I want to be an educator, but I'm too nervous. Just believe in yourself, as if there's a switch in your mind you didn't know about. And now they've just said, all right, I'm going to flip that switch. And now suddenly I'm going to go off. I say I focus on experience, practice and practice. And at first, you're probably going to be pretty rubbish at it. The first time I cut a graduated bob, it was terrible. The first 10 times were pretty awful. And then at the 50th time, it was getting pretty good. Practice, and eventually you'll be poor at it, then you'll get good at it, and then when you've done it to a very good standard, you would have experienced working to that standard. So you no longer need to believe, because you actually know, you've seen yourself do it, you've got the photographs and the video. You don't need to believe it anymore. Don't run east looking for a sunset. You've got to focus on your own hands first. Nothing will come for nothing. If I said to somebody, if I said to someone, how many times have you practiced that haircut? Well, this is the second time I've done it. Then be coachable for a second and stop getting stressed. Because, let's be realistic about this. The second time I did this, it wasn't very good. I compare. If I'm working with somebody, I focus on their effort, not the results, especially when they're nervous. So if someone's terrified and they're nervous and they just think you're going to shout at them or something, well, that's never going to happen, firstly. There's never an excuse for an educator to lose control, in my opinion, to become verbally like that. There's a standard and we all respect a standard, but I always feel like the learner, we're kind of we need to give them a positive memory of cutting hair, so they move on to day 2. Otherwise, they just stayed at day 1. But so quite often when they're doing a haircut, they are expecting to replicate it exactly the same. Now, that's obviously dependent on their experience, and that's dependent on their skill base. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can get there. But if someone says, I've only been cutting hair for 3 months, then obviously we need to coach you to develop your technique and not be too obsessed with the end result. Let's just make sure you're holding your scissors perfectly. The tension's right. You understand the use of tension. Let's just make sure that you leave today knowing more than you did when you walked in.
Yep.
And I say, for me, I've never learned anything instantly. I've never learned anything instantly. Everything's taken a long time to learn, but I am learning. I am learning all the time. Learn from other people, learn online. There's no, the only thing your phone is going to give you is a bill, unless you use it correctly.
Yeah.
If you look at what your company offers, and you can access that anywhere. And, and I just think that there are no excuses anymore. Education is abundant, and it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. It's not only for the few, it's for the many, So I don't know why I've gone off on such a tangent. I don't even remember what the question was.
I love it.
Oh, yeah, imposter syndrome. But I certainly do think the quick answer is there's no quick answer. It takes a bit of time to discipline yourself. But the main thing is, I'm very fortunate that I met my dream woman when I was only 22. And I'm really grateful that I met her so young. And we've been together for like 22 years. I've been married for 18 years. I have a daughter that's 14. And my wife, when we had our daughter, my life never changed. She allowed me to continue working while she looked after our daughter. So I just feel like she deserves a return on that investment. I think that I want to work work, because she could have been doing this.
Right.
My wife had more potential than me. She's a lot more intelligent than I am. So she could have done this, and she allowed me the opportunity to. So I take it really seriously. And, no days off. Let's get this business to a level where the family gets the return on their investment in me.
I love that, Ben. I think to that point, you're so much more willing to sacrifice and do things when you turn it into service of other people
Yeah,
than you are
totally.
likely to do it for yourself. And so I think that's a great perspective. Well, we think you're absolutely beautiful. We enjoyed this conversation so much. Your content I can watch you all day for
Oh,
real.
thanks.
So you make it
Thanks.
really, really easy to connect with you, and your content and everything you have to offer is tremendous, especially for anybody at any stage of the game, whether you're an early, recent graduate student, or a seasoned artist, or even a salon owner. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are and traveling and all the things you have going on. So super, super grateful for your time today. Where can we get your book? Because I know you mentioned you have a book. I just want to make sure everyone knows where to get it.
Yeah. Well, we're actually re-releasing it later this year. We're re-releasing it around October time. We're having this thing put in with loads of exciting features so it's going to be more than a book. That's what I'm going to say. But I've been working when we first produced it and we first had it printed. I didn't like it. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where seeing it manifest in your hands, you're like, well, that isn't what I thought it'd look like. It feels too thin. It doesn't feel right. So the last sort of 3 years, I've been rewriting it. We had it come back from the proof, when you get it proofread to make sure there's no grammar mistakes, because that's not a strength of mine. And now we're just in the stage of, we've got the format there. So we're just adding a few of these little extra features we talked about. So, but yeah, that will be, I'll be promoting that like crazy when it comes out. Don't you worry. But that'll be available probably from my website. And, and I'll obviously be advertising that on socials. But with the things I would always say to anyone, everything you want is possible. But it's not a realistic thing to assume it's just going to appear like it does on TikTok for you. Like life's not going to do that. You're going to have to you can't just sit there and scroll. You're going to have to put the work in. And there's lots of examples like Sam. Look at Ashley Norman. I mean, the amount of work she puts in is, I don't think there's anyone that works as hard as her. She's still got 3 beautiful children, runs a business. And like, I think to myself, I don't think I could catch up with her. And I wouldn't ever want to compete against Ashley Norman. She is formidable. She's formidable. She's lovely. She's sweet as anything, but formidable at the same time. Yeah, fantastic.
Well, you got to let us know next time you're in New York, because we're about 20 minutes from New York. And we also have a 13-year-old daughter, so we could talk about raising a teenager too.
Yes, loads of fun.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I'll be in Connecticut in September, which I know is not too far. So, yeah,
Not at
so
all.
I love Connecticut. Yeah.
Whereabouts in Connecticut?
TG in Newtown and Guildford. They have 2 schools there. So they bought into Core 12, which is my 12-week training program. And Dan and Matt Riccio are just amazing people, very forward thinking, huge amount of respect for Dan. Dan, again, I don't know how old Dan is, but it just seems like 22. The energy, the enthusiasm, the passion, just blows me away. It's really nice and I love America for many reasons. But I love getting like buying gifts. It's just like, like the candy that you guys sell in like a gas station. We go crazy for that in England.
Really?
You can't you can't buy a Butterfinger anywhere in England. So the second I go out there, my wife has given me a list of things. Make sure you get this, make sure you get that. But I would also say the industry is incredible in America. I really do. I think the shows are like second to nobody. When I walked into the IBS in New York, my jaw was on the floor. It was, and everyone turns up. You know that? There's for education, if it's an opportunity to improve, if there's an opportunity to learn something, I've never known anywhere in America I've been where they haven't turned up and really turned up. you know? And I would say I've never felt nervous to teach anyone in America. I can't explain it, but I've always just felt incredibly much like I'm at home when I'm there working with people there. So, I don't know how to articulate that better, but I just love it. I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity, and I'm in Dallas in August. So
Okay.
It's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Maybe it's your accent.
Sorry?
Us Americans
yeah.
love that accent,
Yeah, I always find they're incredibly friendly. Where if I'm in like a store, like a supermarket or something, and I'm going crazy trying to buy authentic American candy to take home and things, I've always found that the second they hear your voice, they're here's Harry Potter, and they're like immediately like assuming like it's either the Peaky Blinders or Harry Potter people kind of go with. So,
yes.
But I just want to thank you both. I really do. I want to thank both of you for you're busier than anybody, and I want to thank you for allowing me a little bit of time to sort of talk about my story, and I really appreciate it. So honestly, I've loved it.
Thank you, Ben. This has been awesome. So your @handle is @Ben Brown. Yes, is that where we can find you?
It's @Ben Brown Hair on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure it's the same on TikTok and on YouTube as well. So
okay. Well, if you're not following Ben, it's time to follow him. He's super awesome to watch and listen to, and all of his advice. Go there, watch him. He could be your virtual mentor. And thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Ben.
Guys, Jen and Matt, thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening, guys. Thank you so
too.
much.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Making It, the path to beauty industry greatness with canvasme. Our mission is to give you a voice, help you find your place of belonging, and empower you to thrive in this beautiful industry. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will fuel your own journey in your career. Head over to canvasme.com and unlock the next chapter of your beauty journey. Create your portfolio, showcase your unique talents, and connect with a community that understands and celebrates your story. Subscribe to Making It for more inspiring stories, and let's continue making it together.